This is the introduction to my new YouTube video course, Analysis for Composers. This course has been on my mind for quite a while. Like most musicians, I took music analysis courses as a student, and I've also taught them over my career. Once I gave a course called Analysis for Performers for similar reasons to this one. Often the performers where I was teaching found that the analysis they were learning was not very helpful in their work. So I tried to focus on the kinds of things they needed answered, like how to differentiate different degrees of climax, where and how to plan rubato, punctuation, and so forth. The composer situation is somewhat different, mainly because the composer, by definition, doesn't start with a complete piece. The composer's biggest problem is the blank page. What do I do next? And while the standard forms like ternary, binary, sonata, etc. do offer some guideposts, they're very general and not that much use in planning a specific piece, especially if the goal is to create more than a pastiche of an older style. This is why, in my textbook, Musical Composition, Craft and Art, I alternate chapters about these familiar forms with chapters about general principles like how to begin, how to make a transition, how to climax, how to end, and so forth. Seen on the deepest level, all the standard forms imply answers to these questions in various ways. But the differences between, say, 4 sonata forms by Beethoven lie in the details of how the principles are applied, and these differences usually grow out of the needs of the musical material. This essential relationship between material and form will be one of the central issues in this series. Another focus will be on why a composer makes certain choices. Of course, most composers don't keep diaries to tell us why the transition starting at measure 35 is 6 bars long, or what were the alternative solutions. But for a student composer, these are exactly the kinds of questions that it's essential to explore if such important choices aren't to be made arbitrarily. What makes great music as expressively powerful as it is? The emotional force is usually the result of many decisions. Further, these decisions often interact with each other. What's the logic behind them? This will be another question we will often come back to. It's also important to note that many of the most consequential decisions in composition are not even about pitch. Most analysis courses never talk about orchestration at all. Even tempo is rarely mentioned. Yet these are often extremely salient aspects of the music's character. Imagine the beginning of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony played slowly and quietly by a flute ensemble. The pitches and the harmony might be correct, but certainly not the emotional effect. With these general points in mind, here are some of the topics I propose to address in no particular order. Dynamics and musical form. Preparing important formal events. The many possible relationships between soloist and orchestra in a concerto. Beethoven's tempo experiments. Orchestration and musical character. Articulation and musical character. How much contrast do I need at this point in my piece? Should I add an introduction to this movement? A coda? Yes, but the most important kind of punctuation. Brahms' Opus 8 revisions, a composition lesson from a master. Anomalies in musical forms. Degrees of dissonance. How long should this section of my piece last? Most classical pieces have definite climax. What about the ones that don't? Degrees of tonality. Relationships between thematic material and form. What kind of transition do I need here? And there are many more. What they all have in common is that none are addressed in standard analysis courses, even though all are clearly relevant to a serious composer. 2 points need to be made about what this course will not be. It is not a sequential course. The topics are for the most part separate from one another, so it will not be necessary to watch all the videos in order. Also, I'm not going to spend much time explaining the standard forms, since that's exactly where most analysis courses do focus, and correctly. There are also many existing books and free web videos about these things. To sum up, I'll be looking mainly at important pieces from the standard repertoire from the point of view of a composer. What can we learn from them?